Happy President's Day, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Let There Be Talk. It is a holiday, February, Monday, 18th. Everybody chilling on the 3-day weekend. Well, not everybody. I always had a shit job where they never recognized any of those easy holidays like President's Day. Nope. No President's Day off when you're construction or selling motorcycles. There's no days off when you're doing sales. You're just fucked. Anyway, how are you guys? I'm sitting here in Los Angeles, California, putting together a week of comedy and podcasting and a little rock and roll. I'm going to be at the Roxy on Wednesday night with Corey Taylor and friends, slipping in there for a little surprise if you guys are going to the show. Look for me. Look for me, Los Angeles. Also, I'll be at the Comedy Store all this week and having some fun, waiting for the goddamn sun to come out. It's been raining nonstop still in L.A. and cold. It's so funny. I was in New York and I come out here and it's cold here. The planet is cold. Great guest today. This is, by the way, a handmade episode. And I know how you guys love handmade episodes, and this one's going to blow your head off because most of you probably love vinyl and hi-fi equipment like turntables and speakers and all that. Over the years, I've gotten many, many emails from all of you saying, hey, what turntable should I get? What's a great turntable? What should I look for? And I had the same questions always myself. The turntable and speaker world is a fucking rabbit hole that you'll jump down and go crazy. And for most people, just a regular turntable and speakers will be fine if you're not really a nut job like myself. But if you want to buy just a great turntable that's going to last you the rest of your life, you got to do your research. And I did it. And I found out a few years ago about a company that was making turntables in America, right in New Jersey, VPI Industries. And I was right away fascinated with them, like, oh, I got to get them on the show. And it took a while, and I finally did. Their story is amazing. They've been around 40 years. It starts with Harry Weisfeld, who's just a sheet metal master and decides he wants to get a record cleaning machine, finds out they're way too much money, says, I could build one on my own. He does it. And from there, he starts building turntables, and it's history. The rest is history. VPI history, to be exact. And now his son, Matt Weisfeld, has taken over, and with his millennial knowledge, he's taken turntables to the next level with stuff like 3D printing and all kinds of great new products and materials out there that you can make a turntable out of. Matt and I sit down and we get deep into turntables. There's all kinds of stuff about turntables that people don't realize and don't understand, and I think it was great to talk to Matt about it. There's 3 different types of turntables. You got the belt drive, you got the direct drive, and you have the rim drive. And we explain on this show today what the differences are. And we have all kinds of different materials that turntables are made out of. Is wood good? Is carbon fiber good? Is aluminum good? What's a great turntable? All of that is answered today, and I cannot thank Matt enough. I've just been jonesing since I went to the factory and took the tour and then went over to the listening house. I've just been losing my mind. And they've got turntables for everyone. They've got turntables from $900 all the way up to $15,000, $20,000. And they're all made in Jersey, all handmade with the same care. So you figure out what's good for you, but I recommend if you are in a turntable market, and this is not an advertisement, I'm just supporting small businesses that kick ass, and that is what it's about. spreading the word of these people that are doing outside the box stuff. I call it the Dean's List. Yep. I've entered VPI onto the Dean's List. Anyway, we're going to get to it here in a minute. You're going to love it. Thank you, Matt, for doing the show. And I cannot tell you, I'm still dreaming of that HW40 classic turntable. It is just beautiful. The thing's a work of art. Some upcoming shows coming up. Going to be with Joey Diaz in Houston, March 7, 8, and 9 at the Improv. I'll be headlining the Comedy Castle out in Detroit, April 11th through the 14th. Back to the Las Vegas Comedy Cellar, April 29th through May 5th. And 420, a brand new date right here. 420, dude. I'm going to be in Milwaukee with Joey Diaz at the Pabst Theater. June 21st, 22nd, 23rd, La Jolla Comedy Store. I got a question for all you Del Raisers out there. How's your hair? Are you losing hair? Losing hair sucks. 2 out of 3 guys will experience hair loss by the time they're 35. Keeps, the easiest and most affordable way to keep your hair that you have. These FDA-approved products used to cost so much, but not now, thanks to Keeps. They're finally inexpensive and easy to get. For 5 minutes now, and starting at just $10 a month, you'll never have to worry about your hair loss again. Getting started with Keeps is so easy. Sign up takes less than 5 minutes. Just answer a few questions, snap a photo of your hair. A licensed physician will review your information online and recommend the right treatment for you. Then it's shipped right to your door every 3 months. Keeps offers generic versions of the only 2 FDA-approved hair loss products out there. Some of you have probably tried them before, but you've never gotten them for this price. Keeps is only $10 to $35 a month, plus now you can get your first month free. That's right, free, Del Raisers. This is a free offer. To receive your first month of treatment for free, go to keeps.com/Delray. That's keeps.com/Delray for a free month of treatment. And I'm going to spell it for you. It's KEEPS.com/Delray, DELRAY. Keeps hair today, hair tomorrow. Do not sleep on this, Del Raisers. Keeps.com/Delray. How cool is that? Free offer right here. I love that. Try it out. My hair is getting crazy thin up top. I've gotten that. It's just there. I'm 53. It's like, yep, I got to get me some Keeps. And you should too. So when you're taking your selfies, you look all sweet. Anyway, I love all you guys. Shout out to the new Patreoners. A bonus episode will be up tomorrow on patreon.com. Don't forget, you can email me any questions I answer on the Patreon bonus episodes at deandelray.com. Or sorry, deandelray@yahoo.com. deandelray.com is my website where all the tour dates are. Bonus episode coming tomorrow. Patreon.com/Delray. A lot of new Patreoners. I love all you guys, and it's helping because I'm going to be building this podcast studio and taking this thing to the next level. Ben Vinning, thank you, buddy, for your donation. Alphabeticalica, a shout out to them again. Joe Soldezo and Jeremy Covensini. I'm fucking up everyone's names. Hey, sign up on Patreon and I'll fuck your name up too on the air. Millions of listeners will hear your name wrong. All right, guys, let's get into it here. Enjoy this episode. I love doing the handmade stuff for you guys. And I think you'll dig it. A little rock and roll right here, a little hi-fi, a little audio talk with Matt Weisfeld. See you guys. All right, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Let There Be Talk. This will be a handmade edition. Introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Matt Weisfeld, president of VPI Industries, and it's great to be here with you, Dean.
Oh man, I just it's been an incredible couple hours just taking in all of this stuff. Of course, I am a vinyl freak and a high-end equipment freak and love all that stuff. I've been following VPI for years. From when I first found out about him, I saw him in a showroom at that Brooks.
Brooks Berdan.
Yep. And then I started following you on Instagram, and I just fell in love with the stuff. And then I find out it's made out here in New Jersey, and I go, this lines up for everything for a great episode. So thank you for having me out here.
Yeah, thanks for making the trip over here, Dean. It's I know it's a tough day of having to listen to music and hang out, but someone's got to do it.
Yeah, right? It's like, man, rough work today.
Yeah, right?
Now, we're sitting in here in your showroom, but before we even get into all of this, let's get a little bit of the history of the company. Your father started it. Now, what are we talking, 40 years ago?
Yeah, this is our 40th anniversary, and the table we've been listening to is called the HW40 for the 40 years of being here as a company. But it was really an accident that it started because my dad, he was a sheet metal mechanic, and my mom was she was a speech pathologist and English teacher, so they really had nothing to do with this industry except for my dad being a hobbyist. But this is expensive, and he couldn't really afford it, so he made his own stuff, which is kind of funny because you have all those like basement guys that make their DIY projects. That was my dad. So I always like to encourage guys because you never know. And he started by making some projects. One of them was the HW9, which I mentioned because that was a isolation base for a Denon direct drive motor with a gimbal tone arm. So 40 years later, it really wasn't a big success then. It ended up took on some steam later on, but that's why our 40th is pretty much a rendition of that. But now with us doing our own motor, our own an improved isolation base, and our own tone arm.
So basically, in the 70s, when really the hi-fi stuff really starts to kick into gear. We're talking about all that 70s classic stuff of Macintosh, Marantz's out there, all the stuff that's people are having in their homes. They're having these kind of elaborate home systems that were really wild. Everything was wood and everything. Yeah. So your dad decides, I'm going to build a turntable. Now, how does he do that? Does he own one and tear it apart? How does he do that?
Well, it actually started with a cleaning machine. That was even crazier because he heard a record play, just a regular dirty record. I shouldn't say dirty, just, not
dusty.
Clean. Yeah, and he then had a demonstration where somebody cleaned it, and he heard it again. My dad's like, you broke me. I need a cleaning machine. How much is that? And it was something like $2,000 in the 70s. My dad's like, I can't afford that. But the guy, it was this guy, Harry Pearson, who used to be one of the top writers in this whole industry. And he let my dad borrow that $2,000 cleaning machine. He basically took it apart, put it back together, and was like, there's a lot of parts you don't really need here. And my dad brought out when I say brought out, he wasn't bringing out a product. He was making it for himself. He made a $300 version of it. And the Harry Pearson wrote a review. And the way the story goes, my dad comes home from his day job, his real job, and my mom's like, hey, good news, bad news. Yeah? What's the good news? You got an order for those thingies you're making. Like, that's great. What's the bad news? It's for $500.
Whoa.
Get started. So he turned into a basement company.
So he starts with a record cleaner.
Yeah. So that's what happened first. Because now that was called the 16.5. No, I'm sorry, 16.5 was later. His first table was the HW9. That was just an isolation base. No one cared. He was just some guy sold to a couple of his friends and whatever he can do. And he made it for the Denon motor. After the cleaning machine, the 16, that's when it turned into who is this guy? What's your company name? And it turned into VPI. Then that's when he got noticed and did the HW9 isolation base, which eventually encouraged him to make his own table through and through. He went for a belt drive, which brought us to. It's so confusing because you always use numbers back then. So then his first actual VPI table was the HW19.
Let's get into the turntables.
Sure.
There's different ones. So I was telling you that I had the direct drive one. And then is this one in front of us? Is that like a direct drive? Now, what is the difference between we have three different styles of drives on turntables?
Yeah. So you have belt drive, rim drive, direct drive. Now, the one thing I've learned when people ask me what's the best, and now I personally like direct drive now better. I've heard others in the past, but it's subjective because it just depends upon what you like to hear. We've got a guy, there was a reviewer who reviewed our rim drive table, which was previously our high-end table. He downgraded it to a belt drive. He felt the belt drive sounded better than the rim drive. And what the belt's doing is it's a belt attached to a pulley, and then the motor of the pulley spins the platter. The rim drive is when you have an idler wheel right on the motor making physical contact to the platter. So then that rim, like I showed you at the factory.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, that actually makes contact and turns the platter. Then the direct drive, the platter is the motor.
Oh.
Yeah, so then it just turns right there. But each system has its pros and cons. The belt drive, frankly, it's the easiest to do, and it's very reliable in the sense of you just need a properly machined pulley, properly machined platter, and an accurate belt.
The belts start to slip and all that stuff over time, right?
Actually, not really if you do proper maintenance.
Right.
So, like, for example, with our belts, if they start to go, like if you're like a cigarette smoker or in a dry area, it might start to make the belt crack after like 10 years. But then you throw it in a pot of boiling water for 15 seconds and wipe it down with rubbing alcohol, and you can usually save it.
So why have all three different ones? Isn't it kind of like confusing? I mean, to me, it really is. It's like whatever's going to last the longest. But some people prefer their like direct drive. They say is the ultimate for like the speed, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be the exact speed.
So the breakdown we have is the majority of our tables are belt drive. Our Cliffwood line, which is the entry-level models, our Prime/Performance line, which are belt drive. And then it's not till you get to the reference line, our Avenger series, the Avenger Plus, where you have the rim drive. And the direct drive, same thing. It's where it's in that higher price point. And a lot of it is because it's a lot more expensive to manufacture that. So we still leave it open-ended, though. I mean, we have our set model. Like the Avenger, once you get to that point, yeah, you're getting a rim drive. Unless you say, nah, I don't like rim drive. Because my thing is, I don't want to hold a listener from getting the experience they want. Because how I listen and how you listen might be completely different.
So your dad starts to make some turntables. And at what point does he... is he able to leave his job and this becomes like a business?
That's when he made the HW19. So once he starts doing that, a full-blown turntable, he worked for his foreman. His boss. He was the foreman. Went to him and he was like, "Harry, what are you doing messing around with working here? Go make your turntables. You're having more fun and clearly love it." And I think that was it was before I was born. So I want to say like the early 80s is when he left his job. My mom left her job as a teacher, and so she kind of ran the office. Well, no, she was the office. And I remember being a 4-year-old kid in the kitchen. Mom would be making me breakfast, preparing my brother's lunch, and taking orders on the phone all at the same time.
And was your dad making each one himself by hand?
Originally, yeah, it was all him. So he made them all in his basement. Actually, it was really wild because people thought our business was a lot larger than it was. So it was just my mom, my dad, and then my grandma came in to help. And she's still with us. It still works, 91 plus years old. And then after time, one of the suppliers, one of the woodworkers for the HW16, one of the guys who worked on it, approaches my dad, this guy Leo, and he's just like, "Hey, I hate my boss. I hate this job. Can I make turntables with you in your basement?" And when I was younger, I didn't understand why my dad was able to have his friends over during the day and play in the basement. You know, it was this strange guy would come over, like, "Hey, little Matt," and then he'd go in the basement, and him and my dad worked in the basement all day making HW19s and 16.5 cleaning machines and turntables.
How many do you think he was making a year at that time? 100?
You know,
I mean, how much
yeah.
were they?
Oh, back then it was super reasonable for the price. Well, technically, if you look at the exchange, we actually haven't really changed in our price. If you look at inflation and all that stuff. So at the time, the HW19 was, I think, like $900, $800.
Yeah.
It was under $1,000 back then, and so it's still, you know, a price point. But you know, all the parts made in America, real wood for the outside. He had the sub chassis. He actually started with aluminum platters. Then, well, there's a whole thing with that, but machined aluminum platters. I'd say hundreds initially, and then over time it turned into thousands.
That's wild. And do you see some of those come into the shop now for maintenance?
Oh yeah, we still have original. We've got a table there right now.
That one you showed me?
Yeah. Oh yeah, that table's so old. We didn't even have a logo yet. And when I see product like that, I know my dad made it. Like, I see that, I'm like, wow, a young Harry Weisfeld was in his basement making this for this guy. And what happened with that was the customer brought it in. He looked us up and realized we were close. Brought it in, and we upgraded the whole thing from 40 years ago. Well, the motor wasn't technically an upgrade; it was just a new one. We upgraded his platter, we upgraded his feet, and we upgraded his tone arm. Full on out, 40 years later.
That's so wild. Do you see some of them on eBay?
Yeah, we see it from time to time. I think our products do really well, like of holding up its value on the used market.
Those early ones, though, you see them on eBay. What are they going for?
They go for, I've seen like $1,500, $2,000, depends upon the model. And with us having newer models, you have people, you know, will sell it on AudioGone or eBay or whatever, and then move into our more current, like, prime models and things like that.
Right. You said something interesting that somebody said, was it weird for you to grow up in a family and seeing the CD come around and realizing that your dad's business could vaporize?
Yeah, it was wild. I was on a panel in Thailand when they threw that question at me, and it was like more harsh. It was like, what was it like to be in a failure situation? And I was almost like annoyed. I'm like, actually, it wasn't. I mean, it's with other people leaving the industry, yeah, it was a smaller pie, but we had a much larger portion of that pie. And I never knew a time where my parents were worried about vinyl. You know, there's that newspaper article in my office.
Yeah, I saw that.
From 1995 that said, vinyl's coming back. They've been saying that since I was born. Vinyl's, it never left. It just, you know, I mean, yeah, people, you know, focus their interest a little bit more elsewhere.
The record companies really abandoned the vinyl. It wasn't the people.
Well, that's the thing. It's the software. You get companies like Acoustic Sounds, Chad Kasim, who's making. He invested a lot into his pressing plants. People thought he was nuts. I remember hearing that when I was younger about, oh, that whack job. You know, he's gonna go out of business. Man, he must have seen the future because he runs his plant 24/7. Another friend of mine down in Virginia, Eric Astor, Furnace Records, same thing. These guys can't press the records fast enough. And with them doing it, they're growing the industry because with the software and the music variety out there, you got Mobile Fidelity with their one-steps.
The best.
Oh, man. And you know what? I thought that was BS initially. And we had Firefly. And we heard I had the original. We did a listening session every Wednesday. My dad and his old buddies, they all come over. We listen. We drink. And, you know, we comment on it, and we listened to an original. And we were all like, okay, there's no way the one-step's going to be better. We put on the one-step. Holy crap, it's better. And it just got us excited. And, you know, the software and the records being pressed and pushing the envelope on that end is really growing the industry.
You're 33, were you a music guy growing up in the family, or were you more of like, yeah, I'm into hip-hop and CDs and then later on, of course, MP3s. What was your whole thing?
I was the weird kid that didn't even know what an MP3 was because turntables were so natural. Like, I always hear this whole thing about gender of the industry, the youth of the industry, all the other stuff as far as like, getting more women involved, getting more children involved. No, it's about the family. To me, playing a turntable was just a family thing we did. I knew how to use a record player like since I want to say like when I was 9, but I'm pretty sure I wiped out a couple of my dad's cartridges then. But like, I didn't really know how to use an MP3 player. I was the weird kid. And then as far as music was concerned, I fell asleep listening to Dean Martin and just like Sinatra, all the usual suspects. And I played the trombone. I played the piano. I did jazz band and regular band. I actually pursued it a bit in college, and then the real world kicked in, and
yeah.
But I still mess around. I've got a daughter now, and I play piano for her, so she loves that.
So you don't even bother getting into the business. You decide to be a school teacher like your mother.
Yeah.
And you go to college and you become a school teacher, actually.
Yeah, it was really wild. I mean, if you told me 10 years ago I'd be sitting here having this conversation with you, I'd be like, no, man, you're full of it. Because, I mean, I loved and appreciated what my mom and dad did. It's music. I mean, it's great. But I never really wanted to do it. And I feel like my mom and dad tried to push me away just so I can follow my own thing. And realistically, there's a lot of stress running your own company. So I think they just didn't want that for me. But I feel like everything I did to run away from VPI gave me all the tools I needed. Like, I taught web design, animation, and 3D modeling. The 3D modeling led to the eventual technology shift with our tone arms, the 3D printed tone arm. My style of dealing with VPI is I look at it like my classroom. You gotta educate people. You gotta teach them. You gotta welcome people in. You come at somebody aggressively and be like, why don't you like vinyl? Well, no, explain why vinyl is or maybe is not better, depending upon the person. I have a lot of students, former students as staff members. My guy Mark Boyle's a former student. I've had a couple of other, I've had probably over 15 students work for me over the time.
What grade were you teaching?
High school, teaching 9 through 12, but I also taught college. So I taught at Homedale High School, I taught at Monmouth University, and I also taught at Brookdale Community College.
So what brings you back in? Your dad's deciding to retire, or your mom passes away, right?
Yeah, that's really what was wild, because, I mean, my mom was healthy. I mean, my mom and dad were in their early 60s, but in great shape, and out of the blue, and I was happy. I mean, I had my life was set. I accomplished, and, I'm glad that happened, because I feel like I paved my own way first and found what I wanted to do, and I was happily doing that. Tenured teacher and everything. And then my mom gets diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Doctor said she had 3 weeks to live. Now, my mom, Sheila, she was fierce. And, I mean, she, just gave the doctor hell and everything. And she lived for 6 more months.
God, just out of nowhere, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then during that time, I was trying to help her. And she was, fighting me left and right. Not fighting, but, she didn't want me to help her with VPI. She wanted me to keep being a teacher and all of that. And I think really what did it was the CES, the Consumer Electronics Show. We got Product of the Year for the Classic 3, a product that we previously made.
10 years ago?
Yeah, so it was December 2011, so almost 10 years ago. So it was January 2012 since the start of the year. And Mom wanted to go, because she knew she was going to die. She wanted to go to CES to say goodbye to all her friends in the industry. I was supposed to go as her seeing eye dog. I was just to get her through and everything. She dies a few weeks before CES.
Oh.
At this point, my dad's like, okay, we're done. And I had this really deep conversation with him. And we're Jewish, and we do Shiva. So it's 7 days, everyone brings food. And my dad sits with me. He's like, okay, Matt, you're part of this too. What do you want to do? I think he's talking about VPI. I'm like, well, Dad, we got to fire this guy. We got to this, we got to that. And my dad's like, well, what the hell are you talking about? I'm talking about the food. What do you want to do with all this food? And that was his first inkling of you give a crap about this company? And because he was, it's no lie, he was ready to sell the company. He was done.
So in 2012, he was gonna just sell it and retire.
Well, the first year, before all that, so I'm out at CES. Well, no, so I end up going to CES by myself in my mom's name. the first thing that got me, because I didn't really know people, but I knew people, and I go up to one of the people at CES, and I'm just shot. I don't know what I'm doing. I wore a 3-piece suit just to like pretend I knew what the hell I was talking about. And I finally tell somebody, listen, I don't know where I'm going. I'm Matt Weisfeld, VPI. And then this woman who I feel like because of the shock, I don't remember who it was, but this woman was like, oh my God, you're Sheila's son. Don't worry. And she just took care of me. And that was one of those moments like, my God, my mom was loved. My mom made a difference. Same with my dad. And then when I got the award from Stereophile, the editor John Atkinson, I don't even know if he realizes like what he said and the impact, but he shook my hand and said, "This is really great what you're doing, and carrying this on," and something like that. And I'm like, wow, I didn't think I was.
Yeah, you're just there because your mom was supposed to go.
Yeah, like I was just, and it was like I didn't really know what my goals were or what I was planning on. And my dad's like, "You're nuts! Cancel the trip. Who cares? Like, forget all that." But I wanted to get the award in my mom's name, and I just kind of winged it. And then one of the most powerful ones was I had a meeting with our Hong Kong distributor. This guy Ernest Lau. He's still our distributor. I have lunch with him. I don't even know why he wants to have lunch with me because I'm useless in my mind. And he tells me, he's just like, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to fail. You're going to have hard times. We'll be here. We'll be waiting for you. And it was like, I'm like just thinking about it. Like it was just like.
That's heavy because he doesn't, you're not even taking over the company, but he just assumes you are.
Yeah.
And hey, you're gonna have some problems, and I'm gonna help you out here.
Oh yeah, he did, and I would not be here like without the distributors like Ernest, this other guy Woody, who made a big deal about family, all of them, and it was so true. And that first year was tough. My dad was so done; he just wanted to sell it. He got 2 really, really good offers actually.
Who were they? Were they companies, factories?
Yeah. There was 2. There was one company that was actually in the industry, and then another company that, this is really wild. This same company, getting into some wacky stuff, it's past now, so they tried to put us out of business. They wanted to buy VPI, and when they couldn't buy VPI, they actually kind of tricked us into a really bad manufacturing contract, and it was wild what was going on. And I get it because we were in such a bad spot at that time, and they did everything in their power to put us out. Plot twist, we're stronger than ever, and those guys are out of business now.
Oh, karma.
Yeah. Oh, major karma. A lot of things happened with that, and my dad was really all for, forget it, you're a teacher. Let's just move on, and I don't blame him. I gave him a hard time, like, Dad, why are you this, why that? He's like, because my wife just died. I'm like, fair.
Yeah. So you leave teaching and you take over the business. Your dad does basically kind of retire, correct?
Not at first. At first, everything was a fight. Everything was, but my dad and I were always really cool about that. Between 9 to 5, he was Harry. 5:01 hits, he's Dad. There was one day, my dad and I got into a huge fight about consistency in the product because I wanted to switch to having, my dad had 3 bearings in the turntable. Same thing. But it was a short, medium, and large. Kind of funny saying it like that. The bearings. But they did the same thing. I'm like, Dad, why don't we do 1 bearing and make thousands of them and cut the cost? We got all into it. It's like, you don't understand. This and that. And I'm like, you're killing the company. Like, we were, like, ridiculous.
OCC chopper shit.
Oh,
I'll be back in an hour.
Oh, yeah. And this was all in front of my grandma. My grandma's like, because she was in the office, 80-something years old at the time, and she was, like, losing her mind thinking like, oh, the family's broken. 5 o'clock hit. I'm like, Game of Thrones is on tonight. Hey, let's hit the bar. I think our bartenders work, and then my grandma's like, what's going on? I'm like, oh, no, I'm still pissed about that and disagree with him, but we'll deal with it tomorrow.
So did you go down to 1 bearing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's really what changed. Well, that led to the Prime. My first product, where it was me solo, was the Prime turntable.
So you come in, your dad has the square shape, which I love. We're sitting in front of it, which is still probably one of the best things I've ever seen on a handmade episode, hands down. But you come in and you decide, all right, I'm Matt. I'm going to make my own turntable and make my my presence known. And you start with these crazy kind of space age shapes.
Yep.
What was your influence on that? Was it an Art Deco thing? Was it just I wanted to be outside the box? Because it's definitely, there's two shapes at this company. One is your standard and the other one is like, whoa.
Yep. Well, a lot of it was another magazine reviewer, this guy Michael Fremer, with Stereophile and Analog Planet. I don't remember what the conversation was, but he like kind of threw a jab at us and basically saying, you guys haven't made a sexy turntable since the HRX. That's the table I was telling you about before. And I realized, we don't have any like sex appeal to it.
Because people started making some weird outside the box stuff.
Yeah, and my dad gave me a huge hard time about the fact that you kids today, you effing millennials, none of you know how to design anything. Without your 3D modeling bullshit, you're stuck. And it was like a real engineer could design a product on a napkin. And that's when my dad, like 90% of the products were designed on a napkin, like over a corned beef sandwich, including the 3D arm, but that's another story. So then I had this weird moment. The first thing goes back to that situation that we were in with those other guys. Well, that's a whole story in itself. But basically, I was pushed about the idea of how essentially our product, we were in a situation where, like, imagine you're going to Lowe's and you have a contract that you can only buy your parts and supplies from Lowe's. But you want to buy something from Home Depot. You go buy something from Home Depot, all of a sudden there's a problem. That's the situation we were in from a manufacturing side.
They locked you into you could only get the products there, but why would you need products outside of them?
Well,
just to be different?
Quality.
Oh, quality.
Quality and keeping true to the design. There was a whole thing with that. I always say I'm going to write a book about this whole thing of what happened. But it came down to having to fight what the core image of VPI. Because the thing is, I like having product that is affordable, that can fit in your home, and that has high performance at a high punch. I don't like the idea of, let's just add a couple of $1,000s on it and call it a day.
Just for no reason.
Exactly. And so we kind of locked in because we've got a lot of great manufacturing partners. And to be fair, I get why it happened. There was our existing partners. There was so many things going on at that time between Mom dying, a couple of our shops moving, them having their own family issues. And that's when that conversation happened where our design parts were kind of locked in. So we needed a new table. And I needed to make my mark on this industry. So that's when I walked out to the factory one day with a piece of cardboard, put it on the ground, and I grabbed our classic table, put it on the ground, and traced it. Then I took our Scout turntable, put it on the ground, traced it. And then that's when I connected the lines and everything. And the outer part of the Prime is the same footprint as the classic. The inner part is the same shape as the Scout. So I kind of wanted to take the two big hits of my dad and tie them together. And then I just looked at the designs that my dad did over the years. The platter from a classic turntable. The motor housing from a table called the Aries, named after me. The isolation, similar to an HW19. The VTA base from our TNT turntable. These are all like the different models we had over the past 40 years.
Like you're paying tribute to all of them.
Exactly. So to me, I felt like the Prime was what I felt was the best of the company of the past, well, at the time, 35 years. And then my mark being the 3D printed tone arm added to it. So because the design is the JMW tone arm. Now, I said before that 10 years ago, I would have thought that I would never be sitting here. Should have been my brother. So I had a brother, Jonathan Matthew Weisfeld. He unfortunately died in a car accident when I was younger.
Oh, man.
He was designing the JMW arm. Well, originally it was supposed to be called the TNA, the new arm, whatever. It was, and he was designing it with my dad. After my brother died, though, my dad finished the design and really, locked himself in the basement with it. And it came out as a memorial to my brother. So I like the idea that I was able to take the design that my dad and brother did and become part of it. It's the same design, just a different material.
3D printing is a big deal in turntable world now. Also carbon fibers.
Yeah.
And all of that. before the 3D printing, how was your dad making the tone arms? Was somebody else making them, or was he cutting them from one piece of aluminum, like an
Initially,
actual?
he did. He did all the original cutting.
The tone arms?
Yeah, all the stuff in the very, very beginning.
That is wild.
Then he had his machine shops do it. And all of our guys are, like, one of our long-term partners is down the street. This guy, George, he walks in. He looks like he's 100 years old. And he's like, oh, Henry, I could do this. I could do that.
Were the tone arms aluminum back then?
Yeah, he always dabbled with different combinations. Machined aluminum, combinations of stainless steel. He actually tried carbon fiber. He just never liked how it sounded.
Right.
Yeah, so
What are your tone arms made of now, like the Fat Boy? Is that like a
3D, the epoxy resin.
epoxy resin? And do you feel it's the finest sounding tone arms?
Yeah, actually, of all the arms that we've ever made, the Fat Boy, it's our best.
Now, here's something I never knew about tone arms. All of them are 9 inches, but on your high dollar tables, they're 12 inches, which I've never even realized till today. The longer the tone arm, the better the sound.
Yeah. Now, there's a lot of engineering opinions upon this, but we find the longer the arm, the less tracking distortion. Less tracking distortion, the cleaner the vocals are, the better it can get the detail and information from the inner grooves. So you're just getting a cleaner sound, getting more layers from the sound and a larger sound. And what we do is on our more entry-level tables, it's a 9-inch arm. Then the middle-of-the-road ones are a 10-inch. Then on our high-end ones, we prefer the sound of a 12-inch. Arguably, though, each arm is different for different types of music. We don't really agree with that. We feel that the 12-inch arm is the best, but some feel that a 9-inch arm is better for rock and roll.
Is that right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But that has to do with an arm being rigid, because it's considered a 9-inch arm to be more rigid than a 12-inch. But we put a lot of work into making sure our 12-inch is just as rigid as a 9-inch.
There's so much to a turntable. So much. I mean, when you look at it right here, we're looking at it. You've got a tone arm, which is, if people don't know what that is, that's the actual thing that holds the needle that you drop onto the record.
Yep.
You've got the cartridge, which is the power for the needle.
Yeah. So the cartridge has the needle and has the generator inside,
right?
Being moving magnet, moving coil, and people ask me what's the most important part of the system, and they're ready for me to say turntable. It's not. It's the cartridge.
Yeah. So cartridges. Okay, the tone arm is $5,000. The cartridges could be $20,000, right?
Well, not necessarily 20. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. I know of a cartridge that's $15,000. So,
$15,000. Yeah, I mean, there's some crazy cartridges out there.
Well, there's some crazy tone arms too. Like our most expensive one, we've got one that's 1,000, 1,800. Oh, geez, I'm trying to remember off the spot. 3,000 and then 4,000.
Right.
Give or take. I might be off on my numbers, but you got some companies that make arms for $50,000.
$50,000.
Yeah.
And do you actually think that you can hear the difference in a $50,000 next to your $4,000? I'm just curious.
I think that it's always a different presentation, but what bothers me is when people are like, oh, it's the best. Bullshit. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not. It's everything. It to me, it's red wine versus white wine. And the other thing is a lot of, these guys. I'm just gonna go out there and say it. They're either dumb or they're criminals.
Yeah.
Because some of these things, the manufacturing costs. Now I know. I used to hear my dad when I was growing up always complain and yell about these high-priced products. Now, not that there's anything wrong sound-wise, but he would constantly say, no, there's no way it costs that much money. Now that I'm actually doing the manufacturing process, when I see tone arms and product like that are in the
$50,000.
Yeah, I'm just like, okay, I'm not saying it sounds bad, it sounds great, or whatever, but how the hell does it sound? Why is it $50,000? You're doing something wrong, or you're screwing people.
Well, there is that thing that people buy into, the rich baller stuff.
Yep.
Of bragging rights, and they don't even know what they're buying. They're like, you see that tone arm? It's $50,000. Listen to that. And most people are going to be like, oh yeah, and they don't even know. But I sit down right here, And we're looking at these speakers, these Genesis that are 32 grand. The table is 15 grand. Now, is it 15 grand with the tone arm?
Yeah, and that's another thing. You got a lot of companies like, oh, it's only 20 grand.
Yeah.
Another 10 for the arm.
Yeah.
No, 15 grand all in.
All in.
Yep.
Okay, and you put on this Who record, Who's Next, and I sat here and it was unbelievable. But I also have been over to some places where there's $1 million stereo.
Yep.
And it was unbelievable. But I do think that you do reach a plateau of like, it's not going to sound better than this.
Yeah.
You got $5,000 cables. You've got $32,000 speakers. To me, we're probably there.
Well, we just listened before. We listened to this system with the Genesis, the Krell gear, the direct drive, the Koseki Purple Heart. This room sounds very dynamic and very detailed. Yet we just listened to that other room before that had a much sweeter low end, had a nice large space, but the detail wasn't even close to the detail with this room.
The detail wasn't there. It's really wild to be able to hear these super systems back to back. Now, where we're at is we're in Jersey here, and he has a factory around the corner, which I took a tour of. That was awesome to see each one of these tables being made by hand right there in front of me. But then around the corner, he bought a house, and it's a beautiful house. I absolutely love this house. And he set each room up as a listening room with the highest dollar equipment that they make. So you can come here and actually hear these turntables and systems in a house, like you were at somebody's house.
Yeah.
Which is wild, because most of the time when you're hearing this stuff, it'll be at a shop and they'll have one high-end room. That's it.
Yeah.
But this is multiple rooms in this house. And to be able to hear the systems back to back really puts it in perspective for me. And I'm a type of guy, if I was making lots of money, I would just say, go ahead and send this to the house next week, because it looks beautiful. It's absolutely bulletproof. He was bumping the turntable. He was stomping a bottle next to the turntable. Zero skip. And everything here will last longer than any of us.
Yeah, and we'll be around to service it. That's what I tell people. Even if someone wants a turntable, that's not my company brand. You know, I always tell people, get a brand that's going to be able to service you in 20, 30, 40 years. You know, and I jokingly say that I hope that my daughter, you know, if she chooses to take up the mantle over here, or whatever other kids I have, that they'll be the ones servicing the prime table. That, you know, that from my time, because I get thrilled when I have old tables that my dad made, like that HW19, and here I am servicing that. And I like that idea of you buy something and you don't have to worry about, they're out of business. Who's going to service this motor?
Well, I can't. That's the only thing I hate about vintage audio gear is constantly, I think, 3 times I've had to take my Marantz 2275 all the way out to Pasadena, which is a pain in the ass because of traffic, and the thing is heavy as hell. And for a while, I only had a motorcycle, so I'd have to have a friend take me out there. And then I'm down with no stereo for a few weeks, and then get it back, and then something else would go wrong. But I do love it. But to have newer stuff that's just spectacular is such a thrill. Now, your dad did something that is the first time I've ever seen this, and a lot of problems with vinyl is warpage. Even just a slight warp makes me so angry. And a lot of new records come warped, and I asked some people why, and they said that they're not letting the vinyl cool down long enough or whatever, because there's such a demand. These factories are just whipping out vinyl.
Yeah.
So even if it just has a slight on a new record, which makes me furious, your dad invented this ring, which I've never seen. You drop the vinyl on, and then you put this ring on, and then this heavy, heavy center weight, and the record is perfectly straight.
Yeah, and now he wasn't the first to do it, but I feel like he really perfected it. And
I've never
it
seen
works.
this.
Yeah, it's the problem with these rings, the problem with the rings, and a lot of companies that have tried to do this stuff is how precise you have to be. The tolerance on the periphery ring is so tight that it fits perfectly. It works with, I'd say, like 99% of all records. There's always that like one wacky pressing that might be a little off in diameter. And if you think about it, right now, the Kaseki Purple Heart, I think, is $2,500 or $3,000 in that ballpark. That's a lot of money for a lot of people. And cartridges, no matter what the cartridge is, will eventually die. And if you have a warped record that cartridge has to go up and down through, you're just hurting the shelf life. So having the record flat is helping your investment of the cartridge, letting it survive longer, and letting you enjoy the record more because it's getting the detail out instead of having to float in the groove.
Well, some of those $100 turntables, I didn't even know this for years, but they'll trash your vinyl.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, you get a... I don't want to talk ill of any brands,
but we know what we're talking about.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I see him at Bed Bath and Beyond, and they're just like, really? And that's the thing. You get some brands that are just great, and again, not even VPI, like entry-level products where the guy will have a good first experience. I hate when a customer gets a crappy first experience because then I'm never going to see them. They'll never upgrade to a VPI. They'll just be like, wow, vinyl sucks. I'm going back to digital.
Yeah.
Because it trashes their records, sounds terrible, gives them an awful experience. And we're seeing a lot of that now with vinyl being back. A lot of companies just throwing a badge on garbage. And look at our turntable. And, there's no partners involved. There's nothing there's no thought. It's just, here's a crummy table. Buy our stuff.
Your entry-level table is $900.
Yes.
What's that one called?
That one's called the Cliffwood.
It used to be the Scout, right?
Yes. Originally, the Scout at originally $1,800 was our entry-level product, which actually got the nickname the Humble Giant when it tied for Product of the Year against a $30,000 table.
That's incredible.
That was pretty cool.
So you don't make those anymore, the Scout 1 and 2 or whatever it was.
We cleaned it all up because
And
there
now
was
it's-
way too many things.
So let's get into it. You got a
Sure.
$900 turntable.
Yes,
Which
the
is
Cliffwood.
fantastic. That's a belt drive table.
Yes.
What comes with that? Tone arm cartridge? Is it like a blue cartridge? What does it come with?
That comes with an Autofon 2M Red or Grado Green optional. We leave it open because taste of customers.
Yep.
It has the motor, of course, the 9-inch machined aluminum arm, and also a machined aluminum platter. A lot of
And
tables.
wood desk?
Yeah. Oh, so it's an MDF with a vinyl wrap.
Were you saying wood's no good?
That's correct.
Now let's get into that. Because all my couple of vintage ones were wood. Why are they no good?
So wood, and I shouldn't say no good, but the problem with wood is the first thing from a measuring standpoint, it's never accurate because you have the grains, you have a knot in there, and wood can warp. We were working on an OEM for a certain brand, and we warned against wood, but they wanted to try it anyway. So I said, okay, we'll humor you. We're going to do it. We're going to put together, then humor me. Let's wait 4 weeks. In 4 weeks, there was a slight bow. Nothing major, but it bent enough that it was off. And I said, that's after 4 weeks. What happens after 4 years of sitting in bad humidity or whatever it might be?
Yeah.
So you get MDF, and it's solid. It's consistent.
What is that, a composite?
Yeah. It's just like it's highly dense, and just it sounds good. You could test it. We test things like crazy. My electric engineer, Mike Bettinger, he sits there with an oscilloscope, pounding things with hammers and all that stuff.
Now, here's something that blew me back while we were at your place. I'm a huge Macintosh fan. Now, Macintosh had never really made a turntable until I guess maybe about 15 years ago. They had the first big giant one. Then they went to the newer, thinner one.
Mm-hmm.
And they were made by that company in Sweden or
Germany.
Yeah, Germany. What's that company?
Clear Audio.
Clear Audio. Clear Audio makes a pretty cool table. That aluminum one, like it. It's about $3,000. I really like it. Macintosh was just, of course, their probably one of the best for bulletproof amps.
Mm-hmm.
But Macintosh really is a lot like Rolex. It's what all the blue-collar guys know as the best in the blue-collar world.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get into watches or stereos, you realize, oh, that stuff's great. But whoa, look at this stuff. And I still want the monoblock 227 or the 275. I'd like to have the monoblock, the dual monoblock 275, and then this turntable and some speakers and just call it a day. But now you guys are going to be making Macintosh's turntables and Shinola.
Yeah, we've really grown our white label department, OEM department, whatever you want to call it. And it's just been really cool. We had it was Shinola came to us first.
Right.
They initially wanted us as a consultant. And now we tell everybody, it looks really easy to make a turntable. It's really not, because there's so many things in there. I shouldn't say really easy. There's a lot involved with it. But we worked with them as consultants, and we went through the whole process.
With Shinola?
Yes. And initially the plan was to make in Detroit, which it started there. But there was still, I don't want to say issues, but it was just a little bit more involved than they had realized. And then it's turned into, well, hey, guys, this is what we do all the time. No difference. Let's just make it here.
Were they making them themselves at first?
This is where it was strange, because they were using our vendors. We were kind of doing a lot, not all. They were really part of the design process and communication with it. But we worked together to get. I mean, it used all my factories, all my machine shops, and
they used all your stuff.
Yes,
and then assembled them in Detroit.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, and then from there, it just made more sense to bring it home to Jersey, because again, the lifestyle base was very easygoing with some of this stuff. Audiophile base could be a little more crazy.
That's different. I gotcha. So, Shinola, what is the difference of a Shinola table and your entry level $900? Was it the Cross?
The Cliffwood.
The Cliffwood.
Yeah.
What are the difference of those two? Because that's the price points and everything. What would make it VPI versus a Shinola?
So the Cliffwood versus the Shinola Runwell. The first thing is the Cliffwood's 900 and the Runwell is 2,500. First thing is the machine finish.
The Shinola's that much?
Yeah, 2,500.
Oh, wow.
It's a bit of a pretty penny. I got to give it to them. Their industrial design team was spot on, and it was just a funny conversation because we discussed what would make sense from an entry-level price point. Then they came out with this beautiful design, and my first thing was, oh, we can do it. That's going to be expensive. And that's what we went with. And I think for the right reasons, because it really has a unique, sweet, clean look. You saw it in the factory.
Yeah.
And once they went over to that machined aluminum top, which adds so much as from a isolation standpoint, more low end and drive in the sound itself.
Yeah.
But it's a machined aluminum finished piece, so it's a lot more than doing an MDF chassis. So aspects of that, then the detail of because they've got that rose gold finish on the pulley and a ring underneath the platter. The platter on the Runwell is thicker, and the arm is essentially the same. To give you an idea, the platter size on the Runwell is the same platter size on our Prime Scout, which is a $2,200 table. The Cliffwood has a thinner platter.
Gotcha.
So it's the same concept, just highly engineered parts.
Is the Shinola and actually just a VPI turntable now? I mean, do they assemble there anymore, or do
no,
you
we
just
do it all here, and then we sell through them. So the Shinola
so it's
table,
really a VIP table, but they designed it.
Yeah, they did the industrial design.
VPI.
Yeah, that's okay. Like I said,
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
over here. So yeah, and it has a phono stage built in. Now a phono stage, which is funny, a lot of people don't really know what a phono stage is.
That's the headphone?
No, that's actually now. When true engineers hate when I make this description, but it's the easiest one I look at it as. It's like, and hey, my wife's Chinese, so it makes sense to me. It's like the vinyls is speaking Chinese. The phono stage is translating it to English. That's what makes that analog sound work with the the rest of the system, to put it very simply.
Oh, so you can just plug speakers into the back of it?
Well, the phono stage. Well, you do have integrateds that have a phono stage and amplifier as well. So you'd have a phono stage. Then the phono stage is either connected. If the phono stage has a volume control, then the phono stage could be connected through the amps. Then the amps amplify the speakers, and then you are good to go. Or you can have the phono stage, like what we have here. We've got the phono stage connected to the preamp, connected to the amplifier.
So it has a built-in like preamp or whatever. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So
it's built-in power, so you can just plug some speakers in and it would work, right?
Correct.
You don't need like the
speakers.
Marantz 2275. Like I need that for my turntable.
Exactly.
I got you. So it's got that built in. Does that make a table noisier and more prone for breaking?
Debatable. Well, actually, no. It realistically, it's not debatable. Yeah, the more electronic stuff you have in there, the more potential possible problems you can have. But the trick is to make it so it's still dead quiet. Like we were showing you the design, the changes that are being made with the board. Yeah. That's going to make it quieter.
Yeah.
Because the more stuff you have in, the more potential to introduce noise into a unit.
When does the VPI Shinola start happening?
That's happening pretty soon.
Pretty soon.
Yeah, because it's a... we kind of just added a little more of a touch to it in general. So we've been making the Shinolas for a couple of months now. And then the little subtle... I don't want to say improvements because it was still a great table, but the subtle increased VPI finishing touches are slowly getting incorporated in there.
How are you going to know if you got one of the newer, better ones? You just wait a while?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's and really the big advantage more so is the defeatability of the phono stage. Because like on our player turntable, our $1,500 model, the advantage is you have the phono stage, but let's say you outgrow that phono stage and you want to put in a $2,000 phono stage. You can't if you can't defeat it. So with our player model, you can defeat it. Now with the Shinola, to me, the big advantage is now if somebody wants to disengage it, now they can. But, and this is what I like to do with all our models, anyone who has a Runwell right now, they're actually not shafted because it's all backwards compatible. Now, I don't know how that's going to be handled, and a lot of people who have a Shinola don't really even care because it's that type of audience.
Right.
But now, essentially, anyone who has an older one that's not made by us, no worries. They'll be able to swap the board with the new. When I say board, they don't have to do any electrical work.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of pulling that sled thing I showed you out.
I saw that.
And popping in a new one, and then they can just have their phono stage disengaged.
How does the Macintosh deal go down? Do they contact you and say they're done with clear audio?
So what happened? So after Shinola, then we got hit by Mass Dynamic, the headphone company. With them, they just did a reskin of our player table. We wrap it in leather, put their logo on the front, done. Then we got approached by Mark Levinson. And I'm saying in this order because I feel like this is what led to it, because Mark Levinson borrowed our Prime table just to take to shows. So they contacted me, this gentleman, Todd Eichenbaum, who I've known for a long time in this industry, and he borrowed the Prime, and they were blown away with how good their system sounded with it. And he reached out. He's like, okay, Matt, this Prime's pretty impressive. How much does it retail for? $8,000? $10,000? Like, no, man, it's $4,000. It's like, holy crap. What can you guys do with like a bit of an expense account on this? So they came in, we started talking, and long story short, we worked with them to design the Mark Levinson number 515 turntable. Now that guy hit a $10,000 price point, but I feel like that also helped give us steam as far as, because 5 years ago, we couldn't really do OEM. We just didn't have that capability.
Yeah.
And to be perfectly honest, back in the day, I would push towards Macintosh. Like, I'd be like, hey, guys, how about we make a turntable for you? It's like, go away, small little VPI or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I feel like it was working with Shinola, working with Mass Dynamic, working with Mark Levinson, that then gave us the clout or just the notoriety of being able to make other products as well as our own brand. That's when we got approached by them. And they were looking for a all-in-one, easy-to-use product, and I showed them the player, which, again, has a headphone amp and phono stage, but that's more on the entry-level side. They wanted to kick it up to they hit a $6,500 price point using our Cliffwood arm, platter, and motor.
That's the new one they just announced?
Yes, just
So
launched it.
you guys make that?
Yeah, only the components, the electronic stuff. So what we do is we make the kits. Then we send it up to them.
Oh, and they put them into the...
Yes.
And who's making the rest of the stuff for them?
That, I think they just do it all in I can never say it. Where they're located, up in Connecticut.
What's
And,
that table like? Have you heard it? Because I
haven't
saw
heard
it.
Yet.
Yeah.
It looks cool.
It looks cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So...
What does VPI stand for?
So that was, again, an accident because my dad wasn't looking to start a company.
Yeah.
He made the HW16. He had to become a real company. And Harry Pearson of, at the time, The Absolute Sound, then the original reviewer, he said, okay, well, you need a company now. You need like a real name because HW stood for Harry Weisfeld. So that didn't really work. Then Pearson was really into horoscope stuff. So he asked my dad, what's your sign? My dad's a Virgo. So he's like, great, Virgo Products. My dad's like, that's a terrible name. And my dad like hates any of that stuff. He's funny. He hates being in the limelight, but once he is, he's cool with it.
Yeah.
And so then it turned it to be Virgo Product Industries, VPI.
Hilarious.
But
So
it was-
70s hippie.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Just some Birkenstocks on. Yeah, man. This is VPI. Virgo Products Industry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it just got shortened to VPI, and we never really talked too much about the Virgo part of it since.
You got a
sound
system
better.
at your house?
Yeah, oh yeah. I'm kind of lucky right now because my system is ridiculous, and I only still have it there instead of here because it's too damn heavy to move. I've got a pair of JBL Everest. Those are the big horn speakers.
Oh, yeah. Kind of like clips.
Yeah. I'm actually running a Prime Signature, the prototype one. This is a wacky one. It's half rosewood, half piano gloss.
Oh.
So it's that table you love the look of, but
Yeah.
only half.
Yeah.
That was like the first one we made. We launched it at the Exponus show in Chicago 3 years ago. And so I got that going on. Then I just kind of an integrated amp and some transparent cable. And yeah, we throw it on from time to time. My daughter loves it, so every time I throw music, she starts shaking.
Now, how many people come to this listening place? Do a lot of customers come, or is it buyers and people?
Everybody.
Yeah, everybody.
Yep.
And
so what I'd like to do is have at least one big event a month. So we already did our first one for January, which got fouled up because of Mother Nature or the weatherman just screwing us.
the big storm's coming. Nothing.
God. Yeah, we had, but the biggest event we had was last year before the renovations. We had over 80 people here. So it's open to the public. Basically, anybody can come whenever they want.
What do? Do they schedule an appointment with you?
I mean, we're usually here. I'm doing a lot more work here in the house than over at the factory.
But I mean, they don't just pull up and knock, right? Do you email
We've had that.
But do they email you or call you?
Yeah. We strongly suggest somebody shoots us an email or a phone call.
What is the email? Give everybody.
It's info, INFO, at VPIindustries.com.
And you just say, hey, I'd like to come check out the tables. Now, I'm in the living room here. Let's go through the tables. This first one to the left, how much is that? The after the $900 one? Is that okay?
So we have the $900 one first, the Cliffwood. We technically have a $1,500 one, but it's basically a Cliffwood with all the electronics. So it's we tell everybody, get the Cliffwood if you want to use your own electronics. If you don't want to be bothered, then get the Cliffwood player that has everything in. Idea of player being
the built-in power and stuff.
Correct.
Gotcha.
But they're the same table. So this guy is the Prime Scout at 2200. Comes with a 9-inch unipivot arm. It's got a 2-inch thick MDF chassis, 300 RPM standalone motor with a machined aluminum housing, machined aluminum platter. I don't know if I said that already. 11.5-inch diameter. And some nice isolation feet there, made out of machined Delrin and rubber with rubber isolators and a stainless and a painted steel plate underneath to make it more rigid and heavy.
That's crazy. Now, standalone motors seem to be on all of the ones that you design.
Yes.
And then your dad's old design is the motors inside of it, right?
Yeah. So my dad actually used to like the motor in the chassis because it was just easier to deal with. But the thing is, no matter what brand, VPI or any other brand, if the motor is in the chassis, the table itself, there is a motor noise. There's nothing you can do about it. It's a motor.
Yeah.
I mean, Can you really hear it? No. But can you measure it? Can you find it? Yeah. And I always found, and I think I'm getting older because I don't hear it as well now, but when I was younger, especially with a little bit of whiskey,
Yeah.
I was able to slightly hear that motor noise.
No
Very
way.
slightly.
Really?
You know, I don't know. Maybe it was psychoacoustics, but for me, I always preferred, and this is why I went for this design. My
Yeah.
favorite table, and not just because it was named after me, my favorite table was the Aries. Now, maybe it's because I did most of my listening where I was like old enough to understand with my dad with the Aries. Also the Scoutmaster, which was an offshoot of that. And that had an outbound motor, unipivot tone arm, machined aluminum platter, and that to me was like my favorite sound signature. So that's why you see the similarities. It's essentially the same table, but each increasing with its
in price point.
Exactly. And
So-
yeah.
So everything now is basically your design except for the classic.
Yeah, the HW40.
That's
yes.
what I'm saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
the vintage one, the 40-year anniversary.
Yeah, so this guy's the Prime Scout 22, and then you move up to the Prime.
Yep.
Now, the Prime was my first table at 4,000. And with this table, and also with the price points and everything, I believe in head and shoulders differences. Good, better, best. The last thing you want is someone to get a table and be like, oh, man, I don't know, was it really worth it? Oh, crap, buyer's remorse.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why actually it's set up this way. If you look at the cartridge, we're using an Autophon Quintet Bronze on all three tables.
Yeah, I see that. All three have the
Yep.
same. So you can hear the sound difference from the rest of the machine, and it's not the cartridge difference.
Exactly. They're all hooked up to the same preamp. So that preamp right over there, the DSA, that
Yeah.
has three inputs. It's all the same.
I gotcha.
And that's going through into the back of the amp.
Yeah.
So I could take the Who and listen to all three. I could put on the first, put on the Prime Scout.
And you're
going
going
to
to get the idea of what each
Exactly.
table sounds like.
And that's partially what we do when people come to visit. So if they're like, well, should I get a Prime Scout or a Prime? It's like, well, you tell me. If the price point works and you hear the difference, then you know which one you like.
Yeah, and boy, do they get beefier as the money goes up.
Oh, yeah. So,
Like, is
yeah.
the motors bigger? Or,
Yes.
Because, man, that motor on the right there is like so tall and huge.
So with the Prime, that's a 2-inch thick platter, machined aluminum. That's, what is it, 18, 20 pounds? It's heavy. You can
So
kill
the
somebody
thicker
with
the
that.
platter, the better
Yes.
base and stuff?
Yeah.
And you recommend nothing on the platter? No felt or rubber or anything?
At this stage, we tell people to listen themselves because some people swear by mats. Other people, like, I've listened without the mat. I prefer it. Gary Coe from Genesis, actually, I don't know if you saw that wacky-looking tape design.
Yeah.
He came up with that, and holy crap, I don't understand it, but it works. Those 3 pieces of tape at that length does something to the sound.
But no damage to the vinyl?
No damage.
That's wild.
Yeah, so the Prime is where you see the 10-inch 3D printed tone arm.
Yep.
Also, if you look at the base, that's a VTA base. Now, there's a VTA base on the Prime Scout, but on the Prime, you can adjust the VTA, the vertical tracking
I
alignment.
can see that, yeah.
Yup, while you're listening. So you can listen.
All that stuff's so confusing when you're getting into the adjustments of the tone
Yeah.
arms and everything. Oh, the what's it called? Like the tracking, or not the
The
tracking.
tracking force.
Yeah, and all
Tracking
that.
force, anti-skate.
All that. It's like, ugh.
Just to give you an idea, about 2 or 3 years, no, oh my God, 3 years ago, how's the time going? I was at CES, and a guy was using our product. It was actually the Prime Signature. And I go out there with the Phono Stage guy, and we're guests. So we set up the room. We're happy. We're thrilled. We're ready to go get a beer. The guy that actually owned the room, though, was like, oh, God, no, it doesn't sound good. And we're like, oh, okay. So we spent another hour dialing it in, and still he didn't like it. The Phono Stage guy, this guy Bill, we are like dying because we liked it. We were happy. Finally, I'm like, okay, dude, you sit there. I point at the hot seat. You sit there. You tell me when you like it. I start raising and lowering the VTA, and then when it got to the right spot, he raised his hand. Good, that's it. Yes, this is music. Bill and I listened to it for a second. Like, that sounds like crap now. Whatever, we're out. You're happy. you know?
Yeah.
So that's where like the subjective listener.
What is the adjustments for? Like how much it's on the piece of vinyl?
You're just changing how the stylus is going into the grooves of the record, and it's more complicated than that. There's the idea of taking a micro USB scope and making sure it's 90 degrees.
Oh.
There's so many things that you can go crazy like reading over, and the problem is that all these cartridges are different angles.
Yeah.
You know, the cartridge companies aren't on the same page. They all have their different weights, their different process, moving magnet, moving coil, high output, low output, the list goes on. So that's why we try to make our tables flexible so it works with all cartridges to the best ability.
I mean, at the end of the day, you can drive yourself crazy
Completely.
running down this rabbit hole of high-end audiophile stuff, and it'll really, really make you nuts. I think the best way to do it for 90% of the people in the world is to just come here and hear your systems, different ones, and whatever your ears think is great is what's going to be great.
Yeah.
Because if you listen to somebody and they go, "You hear that? Oh, you hear that?" And the person goes, "I don't hear that," then don't get that, because it's not, at the end of the day, you're just going to be confused, like, what did I just buy?
Yeah.
So if it sounds great to you, buy that and get out of there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And that's why with the Prime, the goal of that was to be the best bang for the buck. Like I mentioned about how Mark Levinson thought it was an $8,000 table. I love that. I love the idea of pushing above its price point. And so the motor's the same. We use a 300 RPM motor in all of the tables, Prime Scout on up. The Cliffwood uses a 600 RPM. That's a little different. But we found out, and again, we're made in America, and when we were doing an audit of our product for Shinola, going back a couple of years back, I got the paperwork from Hearst, and it said made in America. So I call up my girl over there, and I'm just like, okay, you mean assembled in America, right? They're like, no. We changed and moved it back to America, blah, blah, blah. The 300 RPM motor's made in America. Well, that's great. And we made a bit of a shift, making sure that motor was in all of our tables, because the lower RPM, the smoother the sound is. So that's why we like a 300 RPM motor. But you'll notice the motor housings get larger. So the larger and heavier the housing, the less vibration and potential of anything getting transferred through. That's why we like all that weight, the beefiness, the thick chassis, thick platters, those feet on the Prime. The isolation of that is similar to the HW19 of how it like floated. If you give it a push, it actually moves a little bit with the isolation. And then that 3D arm, which is where I introduced that into the design, it's dead. It's called the tone arm.
Yeah.
But it's got no tone. That was the big advantage of adding the 3D arm.
Wow. Now, I was having a problem for a while of when I would turn up the stereo, it would start the record would start feeding back.
Feedback loop.
Yeah, is that because once I got the speakers off the floor, it went away.
Yeah.
What is that from? Just sitting on the floor? I never knew this. And then I got some speaker stands.
A couple of things with that. First thing could be your rack. A lot of people have all this great equipment, then they'll have a crappy IKEA rack.
That's what I had.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's great to store your records, but if you have your gear on there, it'll go right through the rack, and it'll just like pick up steam going through. But the other thing is placement of the speakers. Yeah. I had a guy a couple of years back. I was going crazy trying to help him. He had a small room and gigantic horn speakers.
Oh, they just feed back from the horn. Yeah. I get that from playing music.
Yep.
But the what you put the turntable on can really give you feedback, huh?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's why with the HW40, those feet where I was hammering the table. So Mike Bettinger really went nuts with trying to engineer and find the right material just so we can do that, because of how often that happens, where someone has a great table, a great set of speakers. You know, you'll notice the Genesis speakers.
Yeah.
Now, the Genesis, Gary's got engineering in here like you would not believe. But still, just in case, we put still points underneath. Those feet underneath there. So even though we don't have to worry about it, we kind of did it because we just like it to be a little bit higher anyway, just our own preference.
Yep.
But there's no way vibrations from that speaker are going to go through the floor. And then with the rack that we have, this rack is a rack we used to make. We don't really make it anymore because, honestly, it's a pain in the ass.
Oh, wow. You made racks for a while, huh?
Yes.
Because that's beautiful.
Thank you. My guy Richie, you met before. Now he's my operations director.
Yeah.
We call him the Man of Steel since he used to be our machine shop, our steel shop, until he took over the mantle of running my floor.
And he was building those, huh?
Yep, him and his dad. It was Rich Senior and Rich Junior.
Those are great.
Yep. Yeah, no, they were really fantastic. Rich, I don't know if it was him or his dad, made this rack special for my dad because it can handle all this equipment. But still, though, if you feel this rack, it's heavy.
Yeah.
And it's hollowed out because you can fill it with sand.
Oh, really?
So it
won't vibrate or move around.
Correct.
That's insane. I tell you what, I can't thank you enough for having me out here today. And I really suggest everybody follow their Instagram, VPI Industries, on Instagram and Twitter. And do you have a Facebook page?
Yes, we do. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, the whole 9 yards, all VPI Industries.
All VPI, and make an appointment if you're in the New York. Look, I trained it over here today. It took me about 45 minutes, and it was so worth it. I just got off the train, and you're minutes from this showroom house. And if you're really serious about getting into an American-made, handmade turntable, this is basically going to be it, because people have emailed me for years, what's a great, great turntable to get? And now I'm going to have to say your entry-level $900 turntable would be, look, most people are going to go $900, let alone $15,000. But what I'm saying is, if you want to get something that's going to be great for a long time and last forever, just get a VPI and then start listening. Or just don't get into vinyl, because like I said, you're just going to get a table that's going to trash your records. Unless you want to just do it for fun and you just get a shitty little turntable and some used dollar records at a flea market. That's a different thing. But I'm saying, if you want to get into these records, they cost a lot of money now. Records are $20 to $30 to $50. Yeah. Do not get a table that's going to destroy those records. It makes no sense. You're just throwing money away at your vinyl. You're ruining your vinyl that you could have saved by spending extra money on a turntable. So I want to thank you for having me out, and great lunch today, and this house and these sounds, and that table right there is the greatest table. Even though I saw a $100,000 table, but at the end of the day, that thing right there, just to me, I know I'm going in a coffin before that thing breaks. I already know that.
Yeah, man. We try to, make sure this thing lasts for life. And,
somebody would be lining up going, "Hey, who's getting Dean's turntable?"
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure having you out, Dean, and you're always welcome back.
Oh, thank you so much.
We have a bed here also, so you can literally hang for the weekend.
Oh,
just listen
man.
to music.
Yeah, this house is great. I love it. Thank you so much, and everybody, do yourself a favor and check out the stuff on Instagram. It's just fantastic. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Let There Be Talk, and there's going to be quite a bit of video footage on my Instagram also of this place. So see you guys later, and keep the candles lit.